So this is the actual ballot language. I'll go through it as one question on the ballot. Again, this is all going to be posted, so everyone will be able to find this. The entire slideshow will be posted to the website. So the way it's worded, and yes, I did check on the word therefore, that is a correct spelling for this particular cause. Shall Augury Sims School District, Aradan County, Michigan, borrow the sum of not to exceed $11,995,000 and issue its general obligation on limited tax bonds, therefore, for the purpose of erecting, furnishing, and equipping a community center facility, partially remodeling, equipping, and re-equipping the K-12 school building, acquiring and installing instructional technology and instructional technology equipment for the community center facility and the K-12 school building, resurfacing and improving the running track, erecting and installing new stadium bleachers, and preparing, developing, and improving sites. That will be the question that is on the ballot. It'll be the one that is mailed out to people around June 27th, and then it'll also be the one that would be on the same ballot for in person. In terms of the bond structure, it's a not to exceed amount of $11.995 million. That is through a $1.5 million increase. That is a 20.5-year bond, and that's paid concurrently with the 2018 levy. It will actually be paid off prior to the 2018 bond. So the 2018 bond will be paid out. That was a 30-year bond, so that would be paid off in 2048. This is a 20.5-year, it would be paid off in 2046. Our current millage rate is 2.35 mils, and if approved, that 1.5 mil increase would bring it up to 3.85 mils. But this is a rate that changes over time. That's the initial millage rate that does get reduced over time as more of that principal is paid off. As a reference point for you, in tax year 2024, the most recent tax year, the state average debt millage rate for Michigan school districts was 4.93 mils. Now that includes a sinking fund and debt retirement. We don't have a sinking fund here in Augury Sims. To my knowledge, we've never had a sinking fund in this district. That 3.85 does represent a number that's 22% roughly lower than the average for the state. All right, so the amount that's been thrown out there a lot, that $9 for $150,000, Mr. Brandamore is going to go into that a little bit, but I wanted people to know that a couple things do apply, whether you're a senior or depending on how much finance you have. Households that pay homestead property taxes greater than 3.2% of their annual income may be eligible for the homestead property tax credit. So for these eligible households, they can deduct up to 60%, up to 100% for senior citizens of the millage increase cost up to $1,700. And so that's based on the income. The calculator for determining this is already posted to the bond project site. So if you know that information, you know your approximate home value, you know your home income, you can plug that into, and it will actually allow you to select the senior credit as well to see how much your actual payment would be. So that's been posted, and I encourage everyone to please take a look at that. I know the comment came up before that we have a lot of elderly in our community, and I agree with that, but a lot of those people will be eligible for a big reduction based on that senior credit. All right, so I'm going to pass it off to Mr. Brandamore. He wants to talk a little bit about how millages do work.
Thanks, Chris. How you guys doing? I apologize for bringing coffee. It was a rough night, couldn't sleep last night. So I just wanted to touch a little bit on how millages work. I've seen a couple things online that were a little confusing.
Not working on it, yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I'll just have to get closer, I guess. So my apologies again. So again, I saw some stuff online. I wanted to clarify this. I did research myself. It wasn't something I understood completely. But 1 mil, when we're taxed that, equals $1 for every $1,000 of taxable value. I've noticed a lot of folks have been using their market value to try to determine what they're going to owe should this bond proposal pass. That's not how it works. It actually goes by a couple different things. When it goes to market value, in Michigan, taxes are figured through assessed value and taxable assessed value. Assessed value is 50% of your market value. When it comes to taxable value, there are other factors that go into it that might either lower it in terms of exemptions, or over time, like raise it with inflation and with property improvements. One of the things Chris put on here was bond money cannot be used on operational costs, including staff salaries and utilities. You could go to the next one. Oh. So these were pulled directly from Internet GIS. These are millage examples for Augrey Township and Sims Township. So if you look through these, if you live in Sims, for example, you're paying about $1 million for county roads, 1.35 mil for county 911, 2 for police, 1 for mosquito, 1 for roads. It's very similar in Augrey Township as well. So when you look at all these together, the 1.5 mil, as far as when I was thinking about it, is right in line with other community benefits that are taxpayer funded. And if you were to try to figure out what you guys were to owe, you go to your last winter tax bill, go to, if you're in Augrey Township, go to your mosquito bill. That's 1. Follow the line, multiply it by 1.5. That's what you would end up owing each year for the bond. Make sense?
Yeah, except over time, that actually does reduce, because the millage rate does reduce over time.
Yes, okay.
So that's your starting cost, and it would reduce over time as more of the principal is paid off with the bonds.
There we go. You want to go anything else?
No?
Thank you.
All right, jumping in next spot, I'm going to pass it off to Ms. Richardson because we wanted to share some of the uses, some of the things we thought about, some of the things we get requests for around here with our building use, and some of the things that we've seen happen within community centers, within domes that we've studied throughout our research on this.
Hi, I'm Sherry Richardson. Can you guys hear me okay? So, I'm not a sports person. I dabble in running a little bit, but when I was thinking about this dome, I was thinking, what can we bring to everyone else in the community besides people who just like sports? When I was living in Minnesota, there was a big soccer field house, and on Wednesday mornings from 10 to noon, they'd open it up, they'd put a bounce house in there, they'd put some jump ropes and some balls, and it would be toddler time. And you could bring your toddlers, you could bring your kids to run around, run off some energy. And that was just one idea, that I thought of. So I made a list of a few things: tournaments, fundraisers, bingo, family game night. We could do, pretty big Easter egg hunt in here. Open gym time, in the middle of winter when there's nowhere to play outside, nothing for kids to do. We could host craft shows, art fairs. I could see us getting, a big screen and doing a movie night where families could be invited to come and, put their blankets and pillows out and, watch a big movie. Celebrations, scouting events. Other sports things that aren't typical team sports, we could host martial arts tournaments, gymnastic tournaments, cheerleading. We could have walking groups for seniors, or anyone in the community who would want to. So those are just a few ideas that we have. Basically with this big of a space, the potential's unlimited. There's a lot of different things that we could do. And so that's what gets me really excited, on top of the team sports that we could do for our community.
But yeah, it does also involve athletics. So those athletics are for our students, our athletes, and for you, the community. One of the important things about this is it's being designed to be large enough for multiple activities to take place at the same time. There's a turf section and there's a hard court area that's available for practice, training, and competitions. So I want to give you some renderings. These are renderings. These are not what it's going to be necessarily, but there are different ways that size can be used. So this is all to scale. These are all done by the architect. Now, on the actual turf, if we wanted multiple things, we would have multiple overlays of different lines, like you see on the gym floor right now. You see volleyball lines out there. You see the basketball lines out there. I've been in other gyms where there's pickleball lines. You out there, it's not as confusing as when you're actually kind of looking at it from above. So for simplicity, I wanted to eliminate some of the other lines and just highlight what that space could actually be done. So right here, you have a regulation 8-man field. Now, 8-man football, it's the same length of field. It's just narrower. So you can see that there's plenty of space above and below where this could potentially be an 11-man. Now, while that's going on, again, you can note this whole space is usable. You could have a football game going on, you could have practices going on, and you could still have people walking the track. You could still have people playing basketball. You could still have volleyball going on. You could still have pickleball, people using golf simulators. That's the idea behind the design of this, is it's not going to be renting the whole facility at one time and no one else can use it for anything else. So a couple other ideas. There's a regulation soccer field, 120 yards long, 71 yards wide. That's bigger than most high school fields. The best high school fields are big enough for people to be actually able to use the full width of it. But not just the full size, that could be split into smaller size fields. That's a regulation size for our 9v9 that we play locally around here. That could also be split into 4 smaller fields for small-sided games, futsal, that type of thing. Looking at the hardcourt area, this is one hardcourt area, but again, I wanted to eliminate the other lines so you could see how it could look. Pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the country. 176% growth in the past year. Now, you might not be a pickleballer, and that's okay, but there are a lot of people in this area that do play, and they do drive to Hale, they drive to Oscoda, they drive to Tawas, and they play in tournaments in Lewiston, in Alpena. That is a fast-growing sport, and a lot of people are very interested in it. So when we're talking about something to get people out of the house, we want to appeal to a lot of different groups. Now, looking at that there, the way that the whole hardcourt area is originally laid out, again, in renderings, is that there's always a dedicated pickleball court up here. The other 6 would be lined on top of the basketball courts. But you would have 2 high school-sized basketball courts where you could play. Coming from somebody who runs the basketball program with his wife at the youth basketball program, I know that they could always use more court space. It's one of the issues that we always run into. But then also you could have volleyball going on during that. Again, you don't see the nets on this, but members of the community could be walking that track the entire time. They could be using the cardio equipment. They could be using the golf simulators. And again, this is just the hardcourt area. The whole turf area is being able to be used at that time as well. A full-size regulation softball field would fit out there. Now, I put the dimensions on there because these are variable. They change field to field. There's no regulated set of dimensions for high school fields, but that gives you an idea. And it's not even tucked all the way in the corner here, but that's just a rendering of a simple softball field. 185 right and left and 200 in center. But then you could also make them a little bit smaller and put 2 fields out there at the same time. I've seen it done. Matt and I have gone on a visit where we saw it. They merged the fence line and just had it a little bit shorter on one side and went a little bit deeper on another 2. You have 2 fields running simultaneously. Again, beauty of this, the design of this, the size of this, 2 fields can run simultaneously. They could be rented. You could be renting out and using the batting cages. This whole area could be being used at the same time as well. Now, baseball would have to be a little bit modified, but there is a place, pretty famous baseball park in Boston, that has a short porch because they were restricted with space, and they put a big green wall out there, and they made it harder to hit home runs because it's a little bit shorter out there. The idea would be we'd have to calculate out how high up we'd have to go on that net to be similar in distance to what it is on the right field line. So in this case here, this one measures out to 310 to right. We'd have to get that calculated, make the architect do the math on that. It'd probably be about 20, 30 feet up. That would be the home run line. But yes, baseball could absolutely be put in there. There are all kinds of things that are out there and available. Things like a portable mound could come in, could be used in there. They're used in indoor environments all the time. Now this is one that grabbed a lot of attention, and rightfully so, because it looks a little bit different than a standard track. And yes, I know that a track is being talked about for the outside. But one of the things tonight's a prime example that we're dealing with is baseball games are canceled. Track meets, if we had them tonight, would be canceled because it's just not good for athletes to run in the weather. So one of the ideas presented, again, rendering, nothing finalized on this, was the idea of putting a temporary lining of a 200-meter track right there on the turf. Now, is it the best running condition? Is it optimal? Well, no, you're not going to have your fastest time running on turf, but we don't even start running track meets until after spring break. There are multiple track meets run downstate within our same state that happened before spring break because the weather's better. This here is an example of how we can make a 200-meter track work. So I reached out to MHSAA and I talked to Cody Inglis. He's the rep over there who's in charge of track, and said, okay, Cody, does it have to be a specific surface? No, it doesn't. There's nothing that specifies in any of the MHSAA regulations or Federation for High Schools that it has to be a certain surface. Not going to run your fastest time, but you'll be running a time, a qualifying time. And some of our kids don't get the opportunity to get qualifying times because we don't have the weather that supports it. So again, just an idea of what we could do. It could be a unique setup there that would just be a little bit different. It'd be a fun type of meet. But you could do all of that within the setup that we have there. And again, track meet could be going on. Hard courts are still available. So why a dome? That's a big question. It's an important question. A dome is 50 to 75% cheaper to construct and maintain compared to similarly sized field houses and structures. It means you get more bang for your buck. Interior LED lighting provides an outdoor experience with comforts of climate control and safety. Air is a great insulator. It also dramatically reduces the construction timeline. So the timeline that's being discussed, should this be passed by the public, would be starting construction in April of 2026. Inflated in the fall of 26, and constructed and operational by Christmas of 2026. We started the bond construction project here on our campus in March of 2020, and it took about 2.5, 3 years to reach completion. A lot of the elements that were very visual were taken care of, so we could get kids back in the building, but it took the better part of 3 years to complete that construction. We've recently been renovating one of our classrooms into a health clinic, and it's taken about 9 months to be able to do that. That was a structure that was already in place. Brick and mortar construction takes longer. There's less moving pieces on the dome. They're pre-engineered, and typically the time on site mostly is spent on setting up the site. The crew comes in, the company comes in, it's already been engineered. It takes about a week from their arrival to inflation. Then there's the interior work that needs to be done, laying down the surfaces in there. In terms of durability, I know the question was raised about wind and winter conditions and so forth. There's the largest dome in the country is in Anchorage, Alaska. Toronto, the market of Toronto has about 12 to 15 domes, depending on how far out you call the metro area of Toronto. So those are areas that have winters, they have strong winds, Toronto gets more snow than we do in our area, so does Anchorage. So it gives you some ideas. Now, the domes themselves, when talking with multiple companies, it's pretty standard that they carry a 15-year warranty. They do have a 20 to 30-year life expectancy, and I put 30 up there because a lot of places will drop their dome during the non-peak season. So for example, Princeton University inflates a dome inside of their stadium during the winter months for their students to use. But when it warms up, they deflate and roll up their dome. Now that frequency of wrapping it up and doing that actually takes time off of the life of it, but the life expectancy is about 30 years. And again, as a reminder, we're on a 20.5-year bond. Fabric replacement for something this size, the fabric is what they call the dome exterior, is about $1 million, but that's built into our budgeting model. So the question, what happens when we get done? What happens when it's paid off? Well, we've got a 10-year built-in right there where it is paid off, but that's part of the budgeting process here, is building that part into getting that again.
I'm sorry, so $1 million is built into the budget?
Well, it's not built into the bond.
For the bond?
It's built in, you'll see the numbers for the budget that we have as estimates, and you'll see that piece in just a moment. So, good question. It's not built into the bond. It's not something that's bonded. So I want to be very clear on that. But we are considering that, yeah, turf does have to be replaced at some point. The fabric will have to be replaced at some point. But just as a frame of reference too, brick and mortar, the steel girdered field houses, they have about a 30-year lifespan as well. So there's always going to be replacements. The life of our roof, the roof warranties are only about 10 to 12 years now. So it just gives you some idea about comparisons on that. Now, making dollars and cents. I want to go through a little bit of the budgeting principles that I use. Mr. Anthony and I use that for the budget here. When it comes to our expenditures, we always overestimate how much everything's going to cost. We definitely prefer to be pleasantly surprised. So whatever numbers we're calculating on things, we always round up. We always push higher. When it comes to revenues, we always underestimate down. So we always say it's going to be less coming in, and we take lower versions of it. So when we have some variance, when it comes to expenditures, we always assume it's going to cost more, and we always assume we're going to bring in less. So this is an overview, and I'll break this piece down. Utilities, electricity for HVAC, inflation, lighting, and natural gas, $200,000. This is annual. Insurance, $100,000. Maintenance, about $10,000. Snow removal, about $10,000. Personnel cost, about $100,000. Annual estimates of our expenditures, about $420,000 a year. From a revenue perspective, memberships, around $66,000. Again, I'm going to break all this down in just a moment. Sponsorships, $240,500. The sponsorship program is not set up annually, at least the way that we envision it right now. However, we have a plan on that piece that I'll show you in a second here. Rentals, $272,850, and then general fund capital projects, $100,000. So since 2018, when we didn't get some of those things done from that bond project plan, we have made the decision to allocate some of our general fund each year to start chipping away at some of those things that we really wanted to get done. Some of the things that maybe were part of that original bond and were cut when it came to the final decision on what went through, but also some other things that we wish we could get, we couldn't fit it in. I'll talk about that in just a second. But we've been chipping away at those for the past few years. We've chipped away enough that the only items that are remaining are really big ticket items. So, diving in a little bit more detail. Utilities. Worked with multiple dome companies. Said, okay, we're gonna make some assumptions here. We're gonna keep this place 70 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, inflated year-round, and we're going to be in active usage 12 hours a day. Now, that does not mean it's going to deflate after 12 hours. It just means you're going to turn off the lights. Calculated energy usage was provided by dome companies and confirmed by the dome consultant, and then estimated up. Annual heating and inflation energy usage, by the way, this is run with our latitude and longitude, with our weather conditions, to give the most accurate number possible. An estimated 289,646.93 kilowatt hours. Annual cooling energy based on those assumptions, 61,000 kilowatt hours. Lighting, 10,585 kilowatt hours, for an annual estimate of energy usage of 361,469. Now, here's where that overestimating comes in. We're going to round that up to 400,000. Now, we don't pay even 30 cents a kilowatt hour here, but I laid out the different numbers that we could possibly have over time for this usage. The actual amount, based on what they were saying, is right around 108,000. But I again went high estimate on that, rounded all the way up, 50 cents a kilowatt hour. We're going to call it, that came out in actual based on that calculation, to 180,000 and change. Rounded up to 200,000. That's where that number at the top comes from. So again, putting that principle into action for how we come up with some numbers here. Insurance. Occupancy number is very low for the amount of space we're talking about. We're not talking about a permanent structure, even though we plan on leaving it up all the time. It is classified as a non-permanent structure. And we're not talking about putting bleachers in, because the second we put bleachers in, what we're talking about is less flexibility in how we can use the space, but we're also talking about a higher occupancy number. That doesn't mean we can't run competitions there. It does, however, mean that people bring in lawn chairs, and we have some lawn chairs in there that can be used and moved in and out. I go to some softball and baseball games. I see very few people sitting in the bleachers. Most people are in their lawn chairs. Same thing can be said about soccer games that you go to. I think if we allowed them, more people would sit in those kind of lawn chairs at football games too. So that's the idea behind it. If we go to something like more bleachers set up, then we have to get into that higher occupancy. I know the question was raised at the board meeting that, why would we want to be the first ones to do it? We're not the first ones to do it. There is another school district in the state who has a dome. It's their primary gym. And they've gone through this process, and they've had to do that higher occupancy number. They had to have a different kind of fire suppression system because it's their permanent gym. And that's Melvindale North Allen Park. So that's downriver. Okay, that's down that way. It's a different region of the state. It's a smaller dome, but they had to spend a lot more for the size because of the fact that they have that permanent structure in place. So we did call our insurance carrier. We gave them all the specs, and the quote that they gave us to insure that would be a $40,000 cost per year. Again, going back to the principles, let's round that up to $100,000. Now, from a maintenance perspective, there's a lot less moving parts, okay? The majority of the dome is open air. So there is preventative maintenance for the systems, including running a backup check on the generator per week, but there are less moving parts altogether compared to similar sized structures. The estimate per year that was given by the dome consultant after working with all these different groups over time is a few $1,000s annually. That's estimated for me, that few thousand, as $10,000. Now, our plan right now, from a custodial and maintenance operations standpoint, is to use our current personnel for it. During COVID, we received additional monies to be able to use on different deep cleaning and that type of thing, and we translated that into an additional half-time person. We had 2.5 custodians as part of our crew and a maintenance operations director, and it's really hard to find half of a person. We hired a full person, and we got a little bit more building, but not a lot more building to clean. But the quality of the product that we're getting from our custodian operations is very, very high. You can walk into our building right after school, and you see a building that you would be surprised that kids were in all day, because they put a lot of pride and effort into their work. And it was the decision of this board and myself to not reduce that back to 2.5 when those COVID funds went away. So we are technically overstaffed by half a custodian from where we were before. But they do such a great job and they help in so many different capacities that we actually do have the capability right now from a staffing model to be able to serve over there. And we're not talking about a big cleaning area, it's a big space, but we're talking about 6 toilets. We're talking about changing in locker room area with restrooms, a couple offices, a couple classrooms. That's the entry building. And then there's gonna be some setup and breakdown. That setup and breakdown, they're already doing as part of what we have going on in the school. There's an opportunity there to take advantage of what we already have from a personnel perspective. From a snow removal idea, yeah, there is a burden to remove snow. It is a big umbrella, an upside down umbrella to catch off that snow removal. That snow is heated from the inside out, so it melts off by the design of it, but we do have to clear the snow from around the outside. Now, the consultant, again, said, yeah, about $10,000 a year. But I had Mr. Anthony pull our exact numbers on that to see, okay, what are our costs? What have our costs been for snow removal? Because we do have somebody who plows our lots, but then we also clear a lot of it ourselves. The past 3 years, 22-23, we spent $1,500 on snow removal. 23-24, we spent $1,125 on snow removal. And this past year, a terrible long winter where nothing really ever melted, $3,000 we spent on snow removal. Again, estimated at $10,000. Overestimate our expenditures. The personnel piece right here, Matt and I have been on several visits. We've been to several different places. We've been to field houses, we've been to domes. And one of the questions we always want to ask is, what is your staffing model? How do you run a place this big? And one of the places, a place that has a dome, a school district run dome, has literally 1 full-time employee. It's a district employee. They hire seasonal staff during the peak seasons, and they hire contract staff for tournaments. That's what they're able to do to run through that whole facility. Now, that one person they hire in, that's full benefits, everything at about $100,000. But it's hired in as needed. Now, another place that we went to, they didn't hire anyone additional. They threw their AD out there with the athletic secretary and said, this is where your office is gonna be now, work from here. Looking at what we have in our district, several of our staff members don't work, some of our hourly staff don't work 40 hours a week. There's an opportunity there potentially to have people work up to 40 hours or maybe a little bit more and get some overtime to pick up some front desk office work. We've discussed different possibilities of who we might be able to push out there to get us past this if that $100,000 seems like an expense we don't want to spend right away. We want to be conservative. But those again are our expenditures detailed. Now let's talk about some revenue ideas. Now memberships. We want there to be some stake in this. We want people to use it. We want it to be accessible, and there's going to be some type of fob access system. We have a fob access system here, but it might not be the best system that we want to use for this. We want there to be after-hours use. If you're a member, if you're a taxpayer in the district, we want you to be able to use this. And so a nominal fee to cover the cost of that fob is something that gives a little bit of stake in things. But we're talking about different tiers of membership for district households, non-district households, and day passes. There are lots of examples of community centers out there, of domes that are used, and there are all kinds of different rates. They're spread out all over the place. So what this says right here is just saying as an average of $10 a month, a $10 a month average for these different numbers, we're going to throw out a number and put it there. We have to have something to base it on. Day passes, coming in to use it. Let's say, for example, Towers is supposed to play a soccer game and it's pouring rain, their field's flooded out, and they still want to play their varsity soccer game. They don't want to cancel it because it's really hard to find a rescheduled game, time to fit it in. They want to pay to rent the field and they want to play their game here. Well, people still need to pay tickets to get into games. Mind you, I think it's $6 or $7 to get it up there, but let's just say we charge that day pass. We collect for all the parents who want to come in because we're hosting the event. It's an idea. It's an example. So that's one thing, is memberships. Now sponsorships is a little bit harder to wrap your head around. Okay, I wanted to get an idea about this, so I reached out to a colleague of mine who is actually the reverse of what we have going on. So what we're going is we're trying to go for a bond to raise the money to build it, to then use this kind of money to be able to operate it consistently. They're the other way around. Where they are in New Hampshire, they can actually get operational costs, but they need to get the startup capital. So they're doing a different way around, but he's actually getting these rates from his community, a school district around our size, charter school network, but it's still, another opportunity. So what we thought about is having some naming rights. And we're not talking about local people here. We're talking about going after bigger sponsors. We're talking about big money clients, My Michigan Health, Meyer, Ford Motor Company. Will we get all of them? Don't know. We're not going to know until we try. But what I can tell you is my colleague Ryan out in New Hampshire is getting a lot of these prices, and he is getting these sponsors. Again, don't know until we put it out there. But then also having a local board, 2-year support wall, having one-time legacy wall, an idea of having engraved bricks as a walkway, leaving our mark, laying the foundation to the future, right up to the entry building. So again, this is all going to be posted. Do I actually think that we're going to get 6 naming sponsors on the interior, massive sponsors for $250 each? No, I don't, but let's go ahead and underestimate that. Let's say we either get half of those or we get half the money for it. Same thing across the board. We've got the field turf, we've got the batting cages, we've got the basketball, volleyball courts, the pickleball court. I don't know if anyone's here from Freaking Pickles, but there is a designated pickleball court there that is pickleball all the time. It is just waiting to be grabbed for you. Golf simulators, walking track. These are naming opportunities. These are commitment opportunities from bigger named areas. There's nothing like this around here. There's nothing in Northeast Michigan like this. It's an opportunity. And again, we're going to go after big targets. I've already reached out and had initial conversations with the tribe about this as well. And they're interested. They've never done anything this big, but they like the idea. They're interested. We also have opportunities within the entry building, the classrooms, the observation lounge, but then our community partners walls. Again, taking this, dividing it out, the 10-year sponsors, the 2-year sponsors, the one-times, if that is all added in, divided out by that 10-year span, it comes in as an annual revenue of about $240. Again, factoring that into a revenue piece. Now, from a rental perspective, we don't want this to be something that's rented all the time and not available for use by the public. We want the public to be able to use it. Part of it, the size, was based on that. So even if we're renting out half the turf, that means half of the turf is still going to be available. 50,000 square feet is still going to be available with nettings to divide. So I gave some parameters, wanted to go through, look at some market rates. Peak season, October 1st to April 30th, that's 30 weeks. Monday through Friday, You can see the calculations for yourself, generating a conservative amount of $272,850 annually. That's saying 70%. That's going for 15 tournaments per year. I've got a colleague of mine, he is a travel softball coach. They're at tournaments almost every weekend throughout the year. And doing the math with him, he said $650 per team. They've got 8 teams per division, 2 fields, both weekends. Doing the math on that, he estimates the places are making $40,000 per weekend. Now, I don't want to put that kind of number up there, which is why, again, I've gone on the lower end on things. But there's opportunities there to use the place. Now, I've talked about the capital projects. Like I said, we've been allocating that $100,000 per year for the past several years to do those things that we could take care of around here. The K-12 projects are the rest of that capital project list. If we're able to get this bond passed and we're able to do those capital projects, the stadium bleachers, the rooftop units, the new roof, we don't have a need for that same $100,000 that we're allocating, and we can put that directly into our operational costs. So again, here's that slide again, but with that net total. Do I know that that's going to happen? No, we don't know that that's going to happen. But again, going back on those principles of overestimating our expenditures, underestimating our revenues, it's a model that can work. And now we'll open it up to questions. All right, I guess we'll go front to back here. Oh, I have one here.
Where's this thing going to be?
All right, that's a good question. So, from where we are right here, right out here. So the practice football field, there's the woody area next to it that extends all the way out back behind the bank, here on Community Bank. I'm sorry, Northland Community Bank. We have purchased that area of land. So we were able to acquire that. I went and talked with them about what we were thinking on this, and they wanted to work with us on it. We were able to negotiate the sale of that property about three. What's that?
When was that purchase made?
Oh,
A few months ago?
yeah, it was
finalized.
It was finalized. I think it was more
Just
like,
throw a general.
I think like December-ish.
And where'd the funds come for that?
That came from our general fund.
And how
So
much
you knew
was
back then?
It was,
that
it
you
was
were gonna
$10,000. It's an area that, it's
I
an
said,
area.
So you knew back then already that you were gonna propose this idea?
We've been talking about this at public meetings for over a year now.
First I heard about it.
The minutes are all posted publicly. So yes, that's the area that would be built on. So partially where the practice football field is now, but then partially into that wooded area. That would be land development over in that area.
So though, at the board meeting, they said this has been talked about since 2017.
Okay, yeah, I can clarify that piece.
So how much money has been spent from 2017 to date on this dome project? You said you and Matt have taken many trips. You have done all this. How much to date have you spent on this project?
I don't have that number available at this moment. I can find it for you and have it at the June 12th one. Now 2017, I wasn't here, so I want to throw that out there. So that piece was part of the plans for the 2018 bond that did go out to voters. Now, it eventually got cut, but there were other things that were included, that were talked about, that were bid out, that were architecturally drawn, including an auditorium, and then the field house was part of it. Now, a dome wasn't part of it, in full transparency, but a field house was part of it. But that was on it until one of the last cuts. None of these board members were here during that time, but the plans were all left in the office for me from when Mr. Collier was here.
So if this bond does not go through, how are you gonna be able to pay for the roof and all the other stuff that needs work?
We'll have to reevaluate our options at that point and figure out what we can address right away. I mean, right now, the most pressing concern is probably going to be the stadium bleachers. And I don't have a good answer for you at this point.
So
Other-
do we not have a football season?
It's
this
not that we
year?
wouldn't have a football season.
What will it be?
Well, partially depends on the insurance company. If we're able to continue to do repairs on it and pass inspection on that, then that's what we'll keep doing. But we've been putting money into our bleachers each year. They were used when we got them in this district. And wood bleachers in northern Michigan, they need constant repair on them. It's not just the bleacher wood itself. If you looked at the foundations underneath the pilings, those cement, those need to be replaced. If they get red tagged and they're no longer gonna be covered, we're gonna have to remove them. Now, does that mean you cancel the football season? No, it doesn't mean you cancel the football season. It just means we're gonna have to think about something different for seating.
'Cause I believe that brings in more money for the school than anything, is that football games, doesn't it?
And it brings in more than other sports, but it doesn't bring more in than like operating millage and things like that. No, I mean, we do get a gate for football. I don't know the exact numbers, but it comes close to balancing it out what we pay for football each year. And we don't have pay to participate in our district. Yes, Chad?
All in all, overall, sports is a huge cost to this district. There's not a single sport that brings in more money than it costs us. And that includes, yes, it does bring in more.
Pride Association, I think that they do a lot. Outside of the school, so I don't
Yes,
think that it costs.
they help with us,
Right,
but they are not the school district.
right, but they
So-
sure do a lot for the school to be able to do like that.
Yeah, but they help pay for things and, you know, nobody's trying to say they don't.
Right, but I'm just saying,
But that's not,
they help too.
that's not income that comes into the district. All sports cost us more money than what we bring in from the admissions for people coming in. That's just a fact across
Right.
most schools.
But I'm just worried, so
Athletics are something that.
if you don't have a plan in place already, if this millage does fail for anything.
We would reevaluate our options after that. We're putting our efforts into this right now.
Excuse me, would you repeat the questions as
Okay,
they're
sure.
coming in to you?
Yep.
Thank you.
Did you talk to anyone in the local community members of city council never heard about it until recently? Any organizations? Anybody in business about this project? Nobody heard about this until the last probably month, except for maybe the school board and yourself. It was like this big secret.
So the question was, did I speak with anybody else about that?
Yeah,
I sat down and talked with the mayor about it.
when?
Months ago.
A month ago?
Months.
It was months ago, Dan.
John?
talked to him.
I talked to him on the phone. I met with him in person. I met with him again during the coffee chats, but that was after the news came out. But it was before any of this came out. I sat down and I did talk with him, yes.
Anyway, most of the community didn't know anything about this
Right.
until recently. And now it's become a big deal because we're gonna be taxed for close to $12 million for this bond. And the $8 million for the bond that we're still owe for, that's up to $11 million now with interest. And by the time this is all through, we're gonna have probably close to $30 million wrapped up into these bond issues. And most of the people that I talk to think this is being very frivolous. The dome is what they think is really frivolous.
Especially when all the kids are not reading and writing and doing math at their grade level. That should be number one priority.
Elementary is. When you have junior high boys and you have 11th graders that don't care if they test or not, they're not going to college, you're not gonna get a good grade unless we can bribe them with something.
Mr. May, piggybacking off that question. You're marketing it as a community center, okay? So I'm part of the community. I know a lot of other people are. and you have not come to any of us, is that correct? I don't know anyone that I've talked to, I guess that's kind of, I think maybe what he's getting at. If you're gonna call it a community center, my thought would be you would go to the community, businesses, people, talk to them and see what the community's feedback is on it. Let us have a say in it, have those conversations. A coffee chat when the majority of people are working is not, I would not consider, you know, going out and talking to the community. I mean, I think a lot of this could have been avoided if you would have went out, or, you know, someone other than Gordy going around talking to community members and saying, hey, this is what we're thinking about. You know, not all of us can come to a board meeting, which is why we elect you to be there, to speak on our behalf. So if you don't come out and hear what we want, how are you presenting this as a community center? That's my only thing. Why don't you just call it the Gres Sims Dome? Why are you calling it a community center? Is that verbiage for your bond to try to get it through? I mean, I'm just trying, could you elaborate on that for me, please? Because, I mean, I'm one of the largest tax businesses in all Gres, and you haven't said a word to me about it.
Right, so there were a lot of things that had to happen in order for this to even become a possibility. I'm sorry, did you hear her question? Why didn't I approach businesses beforehand? There were a lot of things that had to happen in order for us to even consider putting this out there. And they had to happen in a certain order. One of those things was being able to have the space to be able to do it. So it did not make much sense for the board, for myself, to be going out and getting people's hopes up and talking about these things until certain things fell into place. Certain things had to happen. The land being the number one thing. That process had to happen in order for us to even have this possibility. We are not a district that has other land in other locations. We are a district that has what we have here on our campus. My understanding is at some point we had land that was off down the road somewhere. We don't have that anymore. I have had conversations with other people around. Have we been talking with every business? No, we have not. There is not a great forum to be able to have all those communications.
What is this?
That's what this is. Now we're having our informational meetings.
The Chamber of Commerce, the City Council, Parks and Recreation Commission, there's all sorts of venues that this could have been brought up to before we started spending money, not even knowing if people were gonna agree to it.
We do it every time the bond is passed. Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
You see those first 4 words on the bottom of that thing? It says Gres School. Where in the hell are the improvements on the education? Special ed.
Can I
Trade
interrupt?
school.
Why do we need to attack our teachers when
Well,
we're
I'll tell you
talking
what,
about? When
Matt,
we're
I have a
talking.
lot of respect for you. I didn't interrupt you a bit.
But
Then
I'd like
give
us
me a
to
break.
stay on
Give me a
point
break.
here.
I really
Okay?
like you.
I love you. I love you.
Let's leave it at
But
that.
let's not attack
But
our
I'm telling you,
teachers
it
when we're
doesn't say
talking
a
about a
damn thing
building.
about education or anything else. I sent 2 kids to college. I had to pay for an extra year each,
I don't know. what
just to get caught up to college for the downstate kids. You guys don't, special ed, trade schools, come on, their kids need that. This sports thing doesn't help anybody at the end of the school year. Nothing.
We have the skill center,
I didn't
we have a lot of
ask you,
students.
Norma. I
No,
didn't-
but you're
you
not
mentioned-
stating facts,
I'm talking to him.
you're not stating facts.
Oh, I'm not stating facts.
I'll give you a fact. I
Okay.
come here 2 years ago and offered to give free martial arts to this school. And they never said, okay or nothing. And I give them a whole truckload of art supplies. Nothing was ever said about that either.
I wanna see improvement on education.
I wanna see the roof fixed and stuff first before you spend money on $10,000 on a piece of property that may never happen.
You take your contract, roll it up in the dome and take it with you
Should we
somewhere
not
else.
five,
Allen Park,
the
New
whatever,
Hampshire.
3-4 acres for $10,000? That
No.
was a bad choice?
Not when you got a bad
You
roof.
ain't gonna build nothing, you gotta pay taxes on it, right?
And you can have.
Mr. Rain, can we get this back to questions and answers?
Mr. White?
The question I have is, why wasn't it considered to split this into 2 votes? One for the bond, one for the improvements, and then one for the dome. Secondly, the roof, what I understand, I think, the roof that you're looking at, the 45,000 square foot of roof, is all the vinyl roof that was put on during 99, 2000, correct? Is that the roof you're trying to replace? You said
That's-
45,000 square feet.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
Mike said,
I've got,
Yeah, Mike
I'm
knows
a
all that
former
stuff.
retired maintenance supervisor here for 20 years, so I have a pretty good idea what's here. In my own personal opinion, I think this should have been split into two different options, two votes. Because what you have on the top of the page, or the first portion of this, are needs. What you have on this dome is a want. And the problem is, the needs more than go over what the wants are.
Under $3 million.
And the issue comes at the end of the day, you've got two bonds. One we're paying off to 48, this one goes to 26. What happens between 2025 and 2026 when something else goes, excuse my French, goes to hell? You're gonna have your ventilation systems in the gym, you're gonna have your ventilation systems in the building. You already replaced the boilers from 99, 2000 in 25, so they made 25 years. So you're actually taking a big gamble. And
Can I say one thing on this subject as well, because that was my question, exactly. And I also am very concerned about the wording that, because we have lumped these two bonds together, now we have the wording on the voting, what do you call it? Anyway, the wording on the bond, you know, that we're
The ballot,
voting
yes.
for. And it says very little about the dome. There's all these wonderful things that I would vote for in a minute, because this is our school system, and I want the best for our children. But the best for our children, in my estimation, does not include this $9 million dome at the present. It's wonderful. I would love our children to have that opportunity too. But as has been brought up, we have educational problems, and I think there's a lot of things that need to be addressed, and we need to address these things that need doing first before we start doing something that would be really, really nice. I'm sure everyone in here thinks that would be a really nice thing for our kids. But if it fails, can we put an auto body shop in there for the kids to use? Or could we put in, you know, a workshop again of some kind, or an electrical program, or an engineering program? Can they build houses inside of here and learn how to do the building trades? If we're doing something more than just sports, I would be, you know, more inclined to do that. But the wording on that bond and the voting on it really concerns me, because it does not say enough about the division between what we need and what we want to, so that the voters understand what they're voting for. And I'm afraid they're gonna be, like, as it is, if I didn't know better, I would vote for that, because I would want that. Yes.
Mr. Min, was there any talk about a sinking fund instead? A 5-year sinking fund to cover?
We did not discuss a sinking fund,
Just
no.
quickly,
Why were
is
they
the
lumped
board in a
together?
position to, and does the board have an opportunity to revise this ballot language?
This ballot language has gone to the county clerk, it's gone to the election
So it's already.
coordinator.
Just wanna make that clear.
Yes, sir, you've had your hand for a while.
I'd like to know if you did any, projections on
Nothing
the
like injecting
school
yourself into the
enrollment
story.
for the population of the area.
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hear what you said.
Population
Did you
growth.
have any studies done?
Yes.
On future enrollment and future population of the area?
Yes, as a part of the bond qualification process that would enable us to have that reduced rate for the state qualification, we had to do an enrollment projection. We do this every few years anyway, as a matter of practice. We got one several years ago, and it was projecting numbers that didn't end up happening, and we've been steady during that time. The most recent one, they have a revised formula. It has a slight reduction in our enrollment.
How many is that?
Park was built,
The average is a 2% reduction per year.
we had, how many kids? We had that.
2% off of,
When this park was built on.
400
we had a
and change.
projection, and it projected that by now we would be well over 800 students. And then, prison and we had a recession and people moved away.
Well, like I said, they've adapted and changed that formula. I can only tell you what we received in that, and that is an average 2% reduction on our enrollment. The state average is much greater than that. I can tell you that over the past 5 years that I've been here, it's not due to me or anything like that, we've been projected to lose, and we have remained steady. We just bounced. We've kind of gone up a couple, down a couple, but we've remained pretty steady. Whereas in our surrounding areas, they haven't. Bay City's lost several thousand students. We've remained pretty steady. Try to get someone who has, you haven't had yours yet, sir. Go ahead.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
Larry, okay, your bond, $11 million. Okay, you gave us an average of maybe $9 a month, which comes into $100 and some a year. Can I write a check? Once I find out for sure what the amount is on my winter taxes or summer taxes, for that total amount for 20 years. In other words, can I write a check for $2,000 and walk away from it? I cannot, because you haven't figured in and you haven't told the folks how much this is really going to cost them over 20 some years. That $11 million is gonna turn into 30, 40 million by the time we're done. I mean, even your credit card company tells you how much you're gonna pay if you make the annual or monthly payment. In this case, you're not doing it. And what is our education, our Department of Education, our Board of Education, what are we doing in constructing a community center? When we're gonna get back to educating our kids and what's necessary. We don't need a community center, we need to educate our kids.
Well,
So they can go out in the world
I can
and
answer.
do well.
I won't speak for the rest of the board.
Community center should be left up to the city of Algrave, Standish has got one, whatever.
Yeah,
Not the taxpayers to pay for whatever.
I can answer that. I won't speak for the board, but for myself.
You can't even answer how much this is gonna cost.
I'm gonna answer this question for you, okay? I wanted to support this because this community is aging, and it'd be good to get some people in here. It'd be good to attract families. It'd be good to boost businesses with what this thing could do. It'd be good to drive tourism. It'd be good to bring people in from the south and from the north. And it would boost local businesses across the board if this thing works well. There's no guarantee, but that's why I supported it. We brought it to the community. We brought it to the community for a decision and a conversation, which is what we're having now.
After you have it on the ballot.
We've had this conversation for a year.
In the past month.
We've had this conversation for a year.
No, I'm gonna talk, no one's talking about me. You sat here for a month now on social media about this dome.
Yep.
Academically, this school is failing. So you're gonna sit there and put $12 million into a dome. The school is failing, and then Norma sits there and says, well, we have the ISD. How much do we pay for the ISD? What's our rate of, investment on that, return on investment on that? How many kids do we send for that?
How many is
And-
this year?
And
Answer
we,
that question. I don't think they know.
we don't need an $11 million
41,
dome.
42 kids
How are
per
you
student,
measuring
per
his
student?
success?
4.9 is the ISD.
You sat there and mentioned in the beginning of this whole dissertation, after you failed to notify the community for months, for years apparently.
No one showed up to the meetings.
You blasted
No one
social
showed up.
media.
All right, I'm gonna take one more question, and then we're gonna call it an evening here.
But you didn't do it before.
Heather, go ahead.
First of all,
There's
if I'm
42 that go to school.
remembering correctly, we cannot ask for a millage for education, for salaries, for operation, for nothing. We can't ask that in a millage. We can't ask that for a bond, correct?
That's correct.
Some of it can be set aside.
No, not for any.
Not from any bonded monies, no.
You can ask to raise your operating
Nothing
millage.
operational costs.
Which we have, that is the non-homestead, that's the operating millage. That is, if you live in this community, you can vote on it, but it doesn't impact businesses, but it doesn't impact your primary residence. That's how, that's what Proposal A did in the state of Michigan. So you can only enforce 18 mills non-homestead. So while we have enough to protect us against a rollback on that to ensure that we get the full state's money, we can't ask for more than that.
So my question is, how are you going, on your dissertation, you said
right,
academics.
so-
My question is, on academics, how are you
You are
measuring
called
the
upon, though,
success?
other people have had their hands up, and we've already talked about the
You
academic
didn't
piece.
answer my
Tom, go ahead,
question.
please.
I just have, one thing, so on this, I think the budget here, thank you for that, I think there's a lot of people that really wanted to see this, I'm not sure I'm completely convinced by this, but this is what I think everybody was looking for, and I'm sure you guys are working hard to address some more of these things and break this down a little bit more for us, so thank you. My question is, you know, I look at this, and this is a business one. I mean, I think about this from a business perspective, and I work on stuff like this in my day job too, and then of course I have business up here too. This is a lot of work. Like, there's a lot of work that goes into this, and when we look into doing something like this and setting up a dome, and we talk about building a business around this thing, it's more than just one person that does this. I think I understand that like one person would run this thing potentially, but how does the school feel about bringing in a commercial, which is, I mean, essentially as we're talking about, a commercial endeavor into the school system and operating this sort of coexisting with an education system. So now the school has more than just the job of education, we have this job of running this business. How does the school feel about that?
We feel it'll enhance our opportunities for our kids. We believe it'll enhance our opportunities for our athletes. We believe it'll enhance the opportunities for people in the community. So is it something that we're willing to take on? Yeah, we wouldn't be here today if we didn't think that we could take it on, and that we would take it on, because we believe in those opportunities for those kids and for the community members. So I do appreciate your comment on that piece. The questions that you've asked here, they're good questions. And like I said at the very beginning of this is not going to be repeated. The same information is not going to be at the next meeting. We have more information to give, we have more numbers to provide, and we plan on doing that. For the next week, we're focusing on getting through graduation, getting those kids across the stage. You know, that's a big part. And I understand that not everyone has been appeased tonight with everything, but we are releasing as much information as we can. We're putting it out there. But we also believe that we want to educate people along this process. So I do want to thank everybody for coming out this evening and asking your questions and hearing that presentation. The information that we provided here tonight, the handout, this presentation slide here, it will be posted onto our website. You'll be able to access it, and I encourage other people to look at it further. Thank you.
Real quick question. If there's any profit from this dome, will that reduce state funding?
You guys don't deserve our tax dollars. You really don't.
Got it for 10,000, sold for 40,000 in 1999. That's crazy. Even if it doesn't pass, we have the opportunity to do something else with it. Deal on the property.